joining us. I will just introduce you briefly and let you provide your opening remarks. So I'm delighted to have President Jonathan Holloway with us today, who is a US historian who took office as the 21st president of Rutgers on July 1st, 2020. So obviously a very interesting time to take on a new position, but he's done so much incredible work around equity, sustainability, social impact. And so I really look forward to hearing President Holloway's remarks, opening up the conference for the day.
Thank you. Thank you, Noah. And sorry for making you wait a few moments, the classic technical difficulties of logging on. But thank you for the introduction and for inviting me to say a few words this morning. I'm grateful and proud that Rutgers is hosting this summit. So many problems and challenges in the world need not just intelligence or cleverness, but responsible leadership. We need people who will not be satisfied asking merely, can we do it, but should we do it? We need people of character and courage and innovation who will challenge themselves to look at problems from all angles. We need people who understand that quick fixes that disproportionately benefit one group or disproportionately harm another will only make things worse in the long run. And I don't need to remind any of you about the daunting problems we face. Climate change at a moment when we are already seeing the effects, such as disappearing shorelines and often impoverished island nations. Health inequities, which have been with us throughout history, but are exacerbated in times of crisis and pandemic when resources are limited. Wealth inequality, which has grown even larger in recent decades and at a blistering pace in the last couple of years. Systemic racism, which has come into sharper focus in the racial reckoning of the past few years, but is nowhere near an end. And of course, even as the Supreme Court, this is happening even as the Supreme Court is considering cases that could dismantle affirmative action in college admissions. All of these problems tied together, and all of them demand a nuanced and comprehensive series of solutions that call upon every sector. We can't just legislate our way out of these problems, although government obviously plays a critical role. We need social innovation. We need leadership in every sector that recognizes the value of policies and practices that address both commercial success and social justice. At Rutgers, as you may know, as Noah alluded to, we're at work on a number of initiatives that speak to this imperative. We've adopted a climate action plan that commits to carbon neutrality by the year 2040 and will require significant changes in every aspect of our operations, from energy generation and efficiency to purchasing practices to transportation and construction. Just yesterday, I released our first ever diversity strategic plan, which commits us to recognizing that excellence can be found everywhere, but that we have to look for it, nurture it, remove barriers to it, and reward it across all our campuses. I've committed more than $40 million over the next several years to a presidential faculty diversity initiative that will help us recruit, retain, and reward faculty members from underrepresented groups. We boast a highly diverse student body, but don't match the diversity right now in the front of our classrooms and laboratories. Through a Mellon grant from the Mellon Foundation, we've established an institute for the study of global racial justice, which is pulling together scholars from across the disciplines and across the university to address through a humanistic lens some of our current most challenging problems. With support from the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation, we are establishing the Rutgers Equity Alliance for Community Health, or REACH, leveraging our resources to better support the health needs of our host cities. A critical aspect of this project is that at every step, a member of the affected community will co-chair that project, so we empower and really listen to the voices of the very people we are pledging ourselves to help. And later this spring, I'll receive the report from a task force on the future of work at Rutgers, a group born out of our pandemic experience. I charge the task force with making recommendations to help us operate with greater efficiency, promote work-life balance, better serve students in the community, and support sustainability. As we act on these initiatives, Rutgers has an opportunity to find solutions that have implications for the greater society. It's gratifying to know then that here this week, you are focusing on the same kind of goals, driving social innovation that supports multiple diversities, equity across the society, and true and meaningful inclusion. So on behalf of Rutgers, I want to thank today's keynote speakers for their wisdom and insights. Their own experience of leadership and social innovation can help inspire exciting new ways of thinking and innovating here and in all the sectors and communities we touch. Thank you all again for coming together for this important summit and for allowing me this time to speak with you. Thank you.
Thank you so much. President Jonathan Holloway, we are grateful for your time and your remarks, and we're excited to kick off shortly with a full jam-packed day of keynote speakers, including best-selling authors, CEOs, former presidential candidates. And so thank you again for introducing the day. I welcome your presence, and I will just continue with a brief presentation on the framing of the day and the 3 issue areas of climate justice, health equity, and shared prosperity. So thank you again.
My pleasure. Thank you.
So hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us for an exciting and jam-packed day of practice for the Inclusive Impact Summit. I speak here on behalf of the Rutgers Institute for Corporate Social Innovation. We are an institute housed in Rutgers Business School, which many of you may not know is we're housed in Newark at Rutgers Business School. So it's one of the most diverse campuses in the country. A third of our students are first gen. They're the first in their families to go to college, and we're a minority white institution. So to do this kind of work where we are and based on who we are is pretty groundbreaking and I think quite exciting. And so we do this because there are a variety of social pressures taking place today. We know that the climate issue is one that is creeping up on us and one that has been really bubbling for some time. And we're starting to see the effects on a number of communities, as President Holloway mentioned, island nations and et cetera around the world. We know that there are issues around racial inequity. We know there are issues around health. And of course, there are a number of issues around wealth gaps and inequality taking place both in the United States and around the world. At the same time, we see business really stepping up and making an impact to change these forces. And so we see a number of organizations like the B Team, which is going to be speaking today. We'll have 2 representatives from Richard Branson's B Team initiative. We have the CEO of Salesforce saying we need a new capitalism. We have initiatives like ESG, environmental, social, and governance, which are taking hold in the finance world. And so we're really seeing a number of transitions in the way business sees its role in society. And what's exciting is that this is an opportunity for business, not just to give back to society, but also to succeed in the long term. We've seen, particularly throughout the pandemic, there's been emerging research that companies that prioritize social innovation are the ones that really outperform their peers financially and in terms of corporate reputation. So this is an opportunity for business success as well as societal and environmental impact. And so we understand corporate social innovation through the lens of 4 pillars. The first one is giving back to society. So this is ways that companies can provide philanthropy or corporate volunteering or engage in social responsibility actions that give part of their resources to better society. The second pillar is aligning profit and purpose. So this is really when businesses can create products and services that have a financial return as well as a societal and environmental benefit. The third one is engaging in responsible business practices. And we see this as a way for businesses not just to engage with external stakeholders, but also internal ones. And this includes their governance and transparency initiatives. This includes paying a living wage, not only to full-time employees, but also contract and gig workers, and engaging in practices around diversity, equity, and inclusion. And then finally, we see corporate social innovation taking shape by advocating for social issues. We see CEO and corporate activism, advocacy, and public policy as ways that business can really drive change. So at the same time, we see that there is a groundswell around equity. So in addition to the sustainability and the social impact conversation, we know that there are challenges around racial equity, gender-based violence, and other initiatives that are really challenging the world today. And we know that this is happening for some time now, but it seems like we've reached a tipping point where we can no longer ignore these challenges. But unfortunately, progress on inclusion is stalling. There are some stark statistics around gender inequity, racial inequity. You can see here Latinos only hold 4% of executive roles and less than 3% of Fortune 1000 board seats, even though they account for 18% of the labor force. And of course, while there are positive stereotypes around Asian Americans in the workforce, it's actually, they only hold 13% of executive roles, even though they make up 27% of the workforce. And of course, unfortunately, there are some really sad and stark stats around women of color and women in general. So, I think corporate executives that are Black are only 8% of the C-suite. So we know we have a long way to go. And what we're seeing is at the Rutgers Institute for Corporate Social Innovation, we've actually created a framework called Multiple Diversities, which really looks at the 10 types of diversity that we need to take into account in order to drive progress. And so you'll see on the top row, there are the 5 kind of traditional types of diversity, the things that you'll be asked about at a job interview or a job application. But there are also factors that are more hidden, and these need to be taken into account as well. Things like age, socioeconomic background, lived experience, political beliefs, and whether you're an introvert or an extrovert. The reason we need to do this is because diversities are interconnected. We know that race and socioeconomic status are unfortunately connected. We know that gender and lived experience likewise are connected. We've seen women drop out of the workforce during COVID, and many of them are not coming back. And so we see a number of challenges as we look at the intersectionality across types of diversity. So we define this as inclusive impact, the way that we blend together corporate social innovation and diversity, equity, and inclusion. And we define this as a way of bringing diverse stakeholders together through an intentional process of co-creation to actually drive social innovation. So we align social innovation principles with those of diversity, equity, and inclusion, and multiple diversities in particular. And this plays out in a number of ways. We see inclusive impact as an imperative because we can't drive corporate social innovation without representation, right? We need the people in the room in order to make sure that they are represented and part of the process. The second is that there's research that shows that cross-pollination or creating diverse teams actually leads to greater breakthrough innovation. So if you're trying to create something new and different, having very diverse teams is the way to go. And then finally, we know that today's global challenges are immensely complex and they need to be addressed through broad participation. And so today we're taking this inclusive impact lens to look at 3 issue areas: climate justice, health equity, and shared prosperity. And we know that these big issues need to have an equity and inclusion lens in order to be addressed effectively. And so we'll be hearing from some incredible experts from around the world. Again, as I mentioned, CEOs, former presidential candidates, chief sustainability officers, professors, best-selling authors, and movement building leaders. And so I am just incredibly grateful for the energy and enthusiasm that these individuals bring today. And I hope you are excited for a wonderful day ahead. Thank you all. And I just want to make sure that you all are aware that the next session will start at 10 a.m. And so I look forward to seeing you all then. Thank you so much.